Hey, if you're looking for a proven strategy to successfully market your brand or company or organization, definitely this is an episode you won't want to miss. I get to dive in with a former boss and a great friend of mine, Tyler Matheny. Also, on a light note, at the introduction in our conversation, I say that he has in his LinkedIn how to pronounce his name, and I just mentioned that, and then I don't follow up on it at all. The reason I say that is because the company I used to work at with him, people were constantly saying his last name with an entire variety of different pronunciations. So just wanted to help make that make sense. But like I said, you're interested in effectively marketing, you're definitely at the right place, and I hope you really enjoy this episode.
Have you ever wondered what a rock star has in common with a successful CEO, or what unites leaders across every industry and art form? Welcome to the Art of Connection, where we dive into this question and uncover the secret ingredient of success, the ability to connect with your audience. It's not about numbers though. It's creating a meaningful, powerful connection. And it's this connection that shapes outcomes, influences careers, and makes a lasting impact. So strap in and let's figure out how we can connect with our audiences in the art of connection.
Hey, welcome back to the Art of Connection, where we help you build bridges and not walls with your target audience. Today I have Tyler Matheny, not Matheny, not Matheny, Matheny. I actually listened to your LinkedIn how to pronounce thing. I don't think I've ever seen somebody do that. But anyway, yeah, pleasure to have you on. He has been doing marketing for a decade plus. And actually, I'll just read a little blurb from your LinkedIn about me because I think it just really sets the picture or sets the tone for kind of the person you are. But you've got more than a decade leading hyper-growth marketing teams at startups in New York City, Austin, and San Francisco, leading to 74 million in venture capital and 4 acquisitions. So you've got to be doing something right. So with that, what's it great to have you on, Tyler.
Oh, well, thanks so much for having me. One, it's just really great connecting or reconnecting, if you will, with people that you've worked with in the past, especially the ones that you like really respect. There's, a handful, maybe a half dozen people. You certainly are in that group of people that I would love to just always work with again, because you just saw the whole picture. It wasn't just the immediate things in front of you, but it was looking 3 to 5 years down the road. How will this stand the test of time? How quickly will this decay? What else can we make better? And those are the types of people that helped me over the last 15 years of my career build companies that were worthy of exit, that were worthy of acquisition, that were worthy of, $75-80 million in venture capital, because it really became this team effort. I think that's one of the things. I didn't actually start my career as a marketer. I actually started my career as an institutional equity trader, which really is, you're not quite on an island, but really it's a dog-eat-dog world. And so it's not the same sort of experience that you have with startups. And I remember my brother, who at the time, he was the vice president of engineering for Tumblr. This was before they were acquired by Yahoo. And I went to visit him in his Midtown Manhattan office, and there was this energy in the walls. There was this buzz, and you never heard no. It was okay, but what if we did it this way? And when do you need it by? And it was just this really sort of pivotal moment for me in my career, where I knew from that moment forward, like, I want to work at startups. Like, that's what I want to do. I want to have a direct hand in building these incredible things, and then I want to hope that I provide value to a lot of people around the way. And I think that that's what ultimately attracted me to software as a service. You have this unique impact to make this sort of macro impact as you're growing the business. And then eventually you find your technology is in the hands of tens of thousands of users globally. And it's this amazing thing to watch grow up around you.
There's a lot of people that are in marketing, but I think even the specific focusing of marketing with startups, I think is such an even more interesting side as well, because often, startups, you're looking at early adopters, you're looking at kind of pioneers, you're looking at people who are doing something that hasn't been done before. That's not the case with all startups, but often that's very much the case. And so I'm honestly so excited to kind of continue to dive in with you here, because I think that that's even such an interesting challenge to figure out, how do you communicate to somebody something that maybe hasn't been done before. I think that's like such an interesting challenge. And like I said, again, with the decade plus experience at this point, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that you probably have some pretty interesting things that you've learned along the way that help to better show, and maybe also things that don't really show. And so, awesome. I'm like so excited to dive into this.
I was at this early stage startup called Grovo, and we were growing like gangbusters. We had actually grown 20% month over month. So I actually, it's an interesting story. After I left finance, I ended up at this company called UVisit, and UVisit was one of the earliest sort of adopters and sellers of VR technology as a B2B marketing tool. And at the time, this was before Google Cardboard, this was before Google Glass. I mean, this was really when VR was in its infancy. This is when, Lucky Palmer or is it Palmer Lucky? I think it's Palmer Lucky, was building, the Oculus headsets in his garage before. And so he was sending out beta tested developers. And they had figured out that there was this really sort of niche market that had been largely untouched by technology, and it was higher education. Finding a full pay domestic college student in the United States is like finding a needle in a haystack. And some of your most well-qualified candidates, students that would truly thrive at your college or university, may not ever end up even touring it because it's too far away or they're not sure about it. And so we said, what if we were able to recreate a virtual walking tour that was an exact replica of what they would experience on campus? Would that be valuable to you? So our first client ended up being Yale University, and we went out to New Haven and we built this tour for them on their own. We had our whole production crew out there. And this was such an interesting experience because they were a bootstrap startup. I was employee number 5. There were 2 other people that were part of the team at the time, and then there were 3 co-founders. So I was their first marketing hire. And I basically interviewed my way into that job because I had no marketing experience. I thought about what I wanted to do next. And I knew that I couldn't just stare at a screen all day long. Now, largely, I have stared at a screen all day long, but it's constantly evolving and it's always changing. Sometimes it's creative. Sometimes it's deeply data-driven. But I basically said, look, I think I'm the only person that responded that agreed to work for $50,000 a year as the director of marketing at a startup in New York City. I just don't think you're going to find a lot of deeply qualified candidates willing to work for that. But I am, and whatever I am deficient in, I will shock you on how quickly I'm willing to learn. And so I came in really hungry, knowing that the cards were almost stacked against me because I didn't have any experience. And they really gave me an opportunity to learn trial by fire. They didn't have the answers either. But when you're at a bootstrap startup, you really have to be faster and you have to be smarter because your mistakes are much more costly than when you're backed by $2 or $3 million of venture capital. You get to be a lot more exploratory when there's cash to burn, but you really have to lean hard into best practices and what's been tried and tested, what's already proven itself in the market. But slowly over that 4 years, I helped them expand into tourism and into luxury fashion and automobiles. We did a lot of work with Oracle, doing a lot of their cloud infrastructure data centers and things like that. And so we really got to expand that business a great deal. But it was also a very challenging point in my career because I reported to the CEO who lived in Florida. So I only saw him about once a quarter. And he was one of those people managers that I often felt was like, don't do it the way that I told you to do it, but do it the way I envisioned you doing it in my head. And I think that after a while, I just sort of came to understand that I'm not Nostradamus. Like I was not gifted with Professor Charles Xavier's same gifts of good clairvoyance. And so I was never going to ultimately know what was expected of me until I was actually in the meeting. And I actually relived that exact same scenario in a lot of ways at New Chip. But it opened up these pathways in New York where all of a sudden I was just sort of deeply embedded in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. I was going to a ton of meetups. I was going to the Marketo user group, the HubSpot Power user group. I was reconnecting with University of Texas alumni, in a lot of ways trying to relaunch my career. And I met three incredible founders, Sarag Mangehi, Nick Narodny, and Jeff Fernandez. They had co-founded a company called Grovo. And Grovo was this sort of new entrant into the e-learning space. But when I joined the company, so they hired me as a senior copywriter. I was ready to move away from the VR space, wanted to get into traditional software as a service, and ended up making some inroads with these founders that had founded this company. And at the time, they were a consumer-facing company, basically teaching like technical skills to non-technical people. You know, how do I connect my Google Analytics to my WordPress? And eventually, as we continue to grow, I said, look, we're running into this go-to-market challenge where there are so many free resources available. I don't know how many consumers would be willing to pay $20 a month for a service like this. But do you know who will pay for a service like this every single month and for years on end? Businesses. I really think we should explore pivoting the company from a B2C company into a B2B enterprise software as a service company. And ultimately, that's what they chose to do. And I think that's when we really hit our stride. That's when we hit that sort of long-term growth of 20% month over month, 24 months in a row. That led to a big Series B round that was led by Excel Partners. And Grovo was sort of this bittersweet experience for me because, number one, I was finally where I wanted to be. I was at a venture-backed startup learning the rope. Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh no, just real quick. I just wanted to kind of highlight that real quick. I thought that was so good. I think there's such a good principle there that often marketing, is kind of like centered around that you're communicating something that already exists. Like you're creating visibility, you're reaching out to people and showing them a product. And I think you just pointed out something super essential there when your startup went from B to C to B2B. And by the way, if you're somebody who's maybe new to startup, that's business to business versus business to customer. And I think that that's something super important. So like obviously keep going. But I think that's like something super important to realize because like, there has to be sometimes a point where you really do have to go back to the drawing board and you can have like world-class marketing. You can be doing everything possible, but it's like if there's ultimately something like higher up the chain or if there's actually something where the product needs to pivot a little bit, that often can be like, you can have the worst marketing or like the worst outreach, but an amazing product and you'll see the results often. And so anyway, I just wanted to point that out. I thought that's such a valuable thing to kind of like, to communicate to people that,
Yeah, I really cut my teeth at early stage startups. Now, I've seen everything from seed rounds down to Series D. But one thing that I can say definitively, like having spent nearly 5 years at New Chip, now being at Project 10K as their chief strategy officer, is that no one more so than early stage founders have an inability to kid themselves about value. And what I mean is really this. You can't hope that a campaign is going to turn around when it has shown no signs of turning around. You can't put all your eggs in a basket with your business model or your brand in the earliest days because you genuinely, you barely know what your company is, let alone what it could grow to become. And so something that, and I think like the sooner a founder can get to this place, the better, is that my opinion, I'm a founder myself, my opinion just doesn't matter as much as it did in the early days. When it was just myself and Tudor making the decisions, that was a 50-50 split, usually based on what our strengths were, at any given time. But as we grew, and this is true for all of the companies I've been at, when you represent less than 1% of your total headcount, then this concept of like, like what I say goes because I'm CEO just doesn't fly anymore, and it doesn't help the company. And the CEOs that I've worked with, the ones that I've truly grown to respect, are ones that had that sense of empathy, that had that sense of hubris, that, hey, I don't need to know everything. That's why I've hired these amazing people. What I need to do is build a world-class culture, make sure there's enough food on the table so everyone can eat and there's enough money in the bank. And I need to help us attract and retain the best talent. You know, at any scaling company, those are the three areas of responsibility that really only the CEO can fulfill. That's what they're expected to do. But in the early days, it's so different. You're expected to do everything.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the part where you're so on that I feel like it's such a clear kind of moral compass, I feel like almost like a compass to follow is that empathy. Because I mean, if you think about what generally creates like amazing solutions or like, you know, just an amazing solution or an amazing product that's answering a problem that exists in the world is often it's empathy. It's genuine. It's like a genuine like sight or connection that you have with a problem, and then from that is kind of like birthed a solution or whatever. And I think it definitely pivots as like a company begins to grow. But I think as long as you're able to hold on to that strong empathy and, you know, just kind of like, you know, I think that can often, you know, and it'll look different what the empathy, you know, I think you're kind of showing here that like as a company grows, or, you know, as you begin to succeed in whatever your venture is, that your empathy might have to shift from like, okay, I'm just going to keep problem solving, or I'm going to keep making products, or I'm going to keep doing this thing, to it might have to like, okay, so what does it look like to now support these people that their resumes are decked out? I only hired them because they have this experience and they can help me with this. So now what does it look like for me to have kind of that same empathy that helped me create that solution towards them, and now let them help me kind of, you know, create that solution instead of just like, you know, So anyway, I think that's awesome, but
yeah, and I think you're right. I think one of the major sort of shifts around marketing just over the last 5 to 7 years is that a lot of the tried and tested sort of approaches to demand generation, they still work, but they've had to go through major revisions and tweaks. I think because we're trying to cut through so much noise, and I think that as marketers, one of the best things that we can realize is A, not every message we have is important. B, we're one of 24 vendors fighting for inbox space that thinks their message is important. And 3, oftentimes we're just trying to pull together enough sort of stuff to fulfill the KPIs that are a part of our roadmap, that are a part of our chart, rather than trying to ask, are we still delivering value to our customers? Is what I'm going to say to this person worth their time and effort to read it? And you can't just let your own sort of sense of self-importance answer that question for you. And so we used to have a rule at Grovo where we would only send one marketing email a week. That was all our customers would get. That would be all our prospects would get. Now, sure, sales would reach out independent of that, but pure marketing emails, we really wanted to sort of mitigate how much exposure we had to that person's inbox, unless what we had to say was actually going to be valuable for them. And I think for me, all of that starts back at empathy. One of the sort of amazing things that I get to do every day at Project 10K as Chief Strategy Officer, I get to own all of the go-to-market strategies for over 24 startups. And basically, that's how I'm going to sell your product. That's what a go-to-market strategy largely is. So you look at a lot of marketing, you look at a lot of customer communication, you look at that customer feedback loop and how all of those pieces integrate together. But ultimately, what you're trying to do is you're trying to solve that pain point in a way that comes across as very human, very empathetic. And for us at Project 10K, we spend a lot of time trying to deeply understand who it is we're trying to serve. Who are we speaking to? What are the things that they care about outside of your product? What are the other common themes that we can identify? What do those then turn into in terms of content pillars? How does that impact the way we automate our messages? Is any of it SMS or is it all email? How many times do they they need to be reached out to. And so we really look at each one of those factors, but I think a solid cornerstone in each case is how are we going to answer that pain point question? How are we going to appeal to that person's sense of humanity? And we often give examples when people think about brand, and I think this is true of early stage founders, they think brand is a product, and it's really not. It's the sum total of an experience with a product. And when you do that consistently over time, then that brand becomes synonymous with that product, and that product becomes synonymous with that brand. And so when you look at companies like Nike, they're not really selling athletic equipment and apparel. They're selling human potential. Just do it. BMW isn't selling luxury automobiles. They're selling exhilaration, ultimate driving. Look at, Starbucks. If you walk into a Starbucks and then you walk into a Dunkin' Donuts next door, very, very different brand experiences, but they're all supporting that pain point. They know exactly who their audience is that they're talking to, and everything that they do throughout the funnel helps reinforce the language that they know will speak to that audience. And I think that as marketers, that's all we're trying to do in those early days of convalescence. We're putting a lot of things out there, figuring out which pieces are resonating, which parts have traction, and when you find something, if you have a page that simply isn't converting, but you love it, put aside how much you love it and just let the data speak for it. It's not working.
Come on.
I know you love it. It's just not working. and that's what I sort of meant when I said they can't kid themselves about value. I mean, it's so important to be able to be nimble and be able to change as the business needs change. So.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, Tyler, I'm so grateful to have you on right now. Anybody listening, these are conversations that I've had with Tyler where he was directly my manager, and I got to hear so many of these like him talk about so many of these different topics and how they kind of interact with, effective marketing. And so I'm loving to get to record you say it because I love some of the way that you've connected things together, and it's awesome. And I think I just want to really kind of hone in too on, just some of the different, like you were talking about some of the different brands, Dunkin', Starbucks, BMW, those different brands. And I think that's so important. To realize, just to like have those alignment conversations and really just think about like what is your goal for, what is the goal? Like you have your thing that you want to share, whatever it is, just keep moving on that and realize that people are not just looking for one thing. Like they're looking, as you said, it really is like, it is an experience. And I think that's even so great, to kind of tie in a little bit with what you were talking about with the website thing. And, one thing I often tell people, like, if this is kind of more applied to art a lot of the times, but it's like, if you want to paint a pretty picture, then that's amazing. Go do that. But you can't just tell other people that they have to have value for it. And I think when you begin to, as a, whatever your particular vocation is, or like as a small business owner, as a startup founder, even like in entertainment, as you are thinking, you get past the urge to just create something, and then you begin to think about like, okay, well, I really care about this particular group of people. And then you begin to, often that particular group of people will be very similar to who you are. And so you begin to kind of engage more of your brain, and you start thinking about like, well, what is the fundamental thing? Like, what do they want to feel? Like for instance, with the BMW, like, okay, they like leather. They like leather in the car. Maybe they like going really fast. And, all of those things begin to kind of inform how you communicate, and then also like what you are creating or marketing, like what the product even looks like. And so so glad to have you on, and so many golden points right there.
It's I'm really excited. I think like one of the things that we're going to see continue to proliferate across marketing is this sense of personalization. And to me, that's directly tied to this concept of empathy and really trying to understand the audience that you're trying to serve. From influencer marketing to video marketing to personalization to AI, all of it is stemming back to how are we going to tie it back to that human emotion, like that experience that consumer had, that business had. And I think that when you can really tap into that and you can really sort of position yourself as a person of authority in that particular subject, you could do a lot of damage. Like I think one of the great things, so Project 10K, for those of you listening that have never heard of us, basically we bring the conversion of ideas, investment, and expertise, directly collaborating with co-founders to transform these really exceptional ideas into thriving startups. So we are a built-in founding team. So rather than having, my co-founder, one of the big challenges we had to, I was like, neither one of us are technical co-founders. I know a little bit of front-end development, but that's mostly for fixing landing pages. I can't build this product. What do we do? And I think that that's where we have been such a boon for a lot of our founders, is that cold start problem, they no longer have it. We provide funding, we provide engineers, marketers, copywriters, graphic designers, everything that you would need to successfully bring a product to market. That's what we're providing. But it all starts with understanding who they see themselves as a company, as a brand. What are those core components that are deeply held beliefs of theirs that are important to them? How does that then influence our shape language and the way that we describe products and services and functionality, all speaking back to that. And I think for me, I was given a really, really great piece of advice, and early in my marketing career, and it was this: you cannot be everything to everyone, so be everything to a small group and then grow from there. Really focus on developing those brand evangelists, the people that not only will help support you when you're down, and trust me, if you're a startup founder, you're considering becoming an entrepreneur, there will be down times. Mark my words. It doesn't matter how big of a flash you have, whether you're a Clubhouse or a Stripe. They went through hard times. I mean, John, the guys at Stripe, they went through a retraction just like many of the other founders and startups in Silicon Valley. They had to lay off a lot of people. And I think one of the reasons they didn't take it on the shins the same way that a lot of other CEOs did is because the very first word in their blog post, that first sentence said, "We take complete responsibility for the events that unfolded today." That was the first words about it. They took really, really good care of the people that they were parting ways with. And I think that, again, that helps save them as an employer brand. That helped people have faith in Reliance that, like, look, there's still some really good founders out there doing right by their investors, doing right by their employees, doing right by their co-founders. It's not all the hoopla and insanity that is often what makes headlines.
Yeah. Well, hey, I think it's safe to say at this point, the word empathy will definitely make it into the title for this episode, or maybe it'll be like that'll be the thing that I leave out, like the most effective thing to change your marketing strategy, and that'll be empathy. So anyway, well, man, this is awesome. No, I try to come into these with a bunch of different questions, to try to pull the gold out. But you have really, you've hit on so many different little, honestly, not even little, but like things that are, not only are you saying it, not only have you actually seen them work, but these are things that like other people that are, revolutionizing the market industry and people that are leaders and are leading and also seeing amazing results are also seeing. And so I just really think that has to be said, that a lot of this isn't even just like, good ideas or, just another two guys on a podcast, that this is like, a lot of the stuff that you're saying, like there's a lot of the, the points where you're like, this is the way you want to do it, that there's a lot of evidence and data backing the effectiveness of some of these different practices. So man, Thank you so much. So I think I want to start winding down a little bit. I've got a speed round at the end. I love speed round questions in podcasts. But first off, just real quick, you've talked about Project 10K. You just gave a pretty good kind of pitch for it a couple minutes ago. If there's anything else you want to say that, and then I also know that you mentioned that you are a founder or a co-founder for another startup, and I'm letting you talk about it because I definitely know it's like a very close subject to your heart, something you're so passionate about. So it's Yana, but I didn't say that. It's Yana. The name of it is Yana. But anything else if you want to just promote anything you guys are doing or working towards with that, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, so Yana started really at the beginning of the pandemic in 2020 because the overdose death rate skyrocketed nationwide. It was a epidemic that had largely flown under the radar of most people. And to put it in perspective, for those of you that may not be aware of how bad it's become, in 2022, 44,000 people lost their lives to automobile accidents. 107,000 people died from opioid use disorder. And I myself am in long-term recovery. And when I looked at my own recovery journey, and it was really rocky. I mean, there were some deep, deep low points during that journey. And I had a career, so I had access to money. I had good benefits. And it was so hard for me to get and stay sober. And I started thinking about all the people that didn't have those advantages. Are they just resigned to die? So I looked at that. And then I also looked at, I have watched so many people in recovery die over the last 2 decades that I've been involved in sort of the recovery area. And when I really sort of looked at what the causes and conditions that sort of led to it, I came to 2 really inescapable conclusions. Number one, we have gotten so far away from the primary message of what Alcoholics Anonymous was founded for that in many meetings across the world, it's really almost difficult to tell that you're even in an AA meeting. And then the second thing that I recognized was that the continuum of care post-treatment was largely fragmented and completely broken. And so I wanted to try and fix both of those things. And initially, like, our thought was, look, we'll raise a round of funding where, this is just going to be a business. But the more we started working with investors, the more that they continue to talk about our users as people that needed to be monetized, the more I became disenfranchised with funding it through venture capital. Because in reality, what we're talking about are people that are sick and dying, that are looking for help. Yeah. And so we made the decision to transition Yana into a nonprofit. And so all of our services are free. If you or a loved one are in recovery or exploring what recovery is, I'd love for you to check us out. Just go to www.yana, that's yana.company. It's 24/7, 365. We don't check insurance. We were just there to support people and help them find a path to recovery. And so, yeah, it's something that's really near and dear to my heart. It's my co-founder asked, when do you think we'll be done? And I said, I think, until I'm convinced that it's no longer valuable to the people that use it. And so we're happy to, fund it through whatever donations we happen to come across and out of our own pocket for as long as we need to.
Yeah, come on. Yeah, I literally love it. And also, anybody listening, like I mentioned, working closely with Tyler, personally having very close people in my life who have struggled with addiction, and Tyler's support, I love it that you're in person, and then also you're doing trying to do something that's at scale, trying to help a bigger problem. That's amazing. And I just pray that's that's so blessed. It's such a cool venture. So, alrighty, man. Well, awesome. Again, like I said, thanks so much for having you on. I'm just going to run through these speed rounds real quick. If you haven't guessed, Tyler is fantastic at talking, so this might be a challenge for you. I think everybody on his team at some point was making fun of him for being able to. This man can talk for forever. So anyway, so this will be a challenge. This will be a challenge for you, Tyler. So speed round. Okay, so favorite marketing trend.
Oh, I got to say, I'm really encouraged by AI. I know everybody's been talking about it, but the reality is that it's going to fundamentally change the way that we market to people. And I think it's going to improve the way that the other side of that equation experiences our marketing. I think it will speak to those pain points. I think it will speak in a language that's familiar and safe and comfortable to them. And so I think that we should embrace it. But like anything that is worth protecting, we really do have to take care of it. I share some of the sentiments of Elon Musk, his voice, as well as Sam Altman. And I think that it's really, really important that we understand just how far-reaching the impact of AI can have and act accordingly.
Got it. No, yeah. I mean, that was honestly, I feel like that pretty well reflects my point too. I think it can be an amazing accelerator, but I think also humanity as a whole has some like things to kind of get figured out inside them. And so it'll also be a great accelerator for any of those things that we need to get dialed in a little bit. So, okay, what is your least favorite marketing trend?
Oh. Okay, so this isn't really a marketing trend. I wish there was just a better way to do cold outreach, cold email outreach, where
guessing.
Like, you know that there's people that would use your product, that would benefit from it if they only knew about it. And I think a lot of us tend to just really rely on attraction, or really rely on promotion over attraction. I think that the products that have really hit the market and really found strong product market fit largely did so because they were backed by a legion of believers that found true value in what they had already built. And that sort of had this cascading effect on their marketing. And so, but I think in the early days, when you have questions around the value of what you've built, or you're not sure that it even is valuable, still doesn't mean that you can't lean into developing those brand evangelists, those true, people that will sing your praises. One of the things that we do at Yana, even to this day, and we've done it since our inception, is we have monthly town halls. Our fans, our haters, they all get to join us, tell us what they love and hate about the platform, or about the person that tried to sell them Bitcoin. We're not without fault ourselves, but the fastest feedback loop we've found is just by opening it up and saying, come share what you think with us. Tell us what we've done wrong. Tell us what we did great. Tell us about a feature you'd love to see, something that would be really helpful. And having that open dialogue does two things. One, it gives us that direct feedback that we need to influence the product roadmap. But two, it allows them to feel like they have a much greater stake in Yana than just membership in a community. It makes them feel like they're being listened to, that what they want to see could eventually happen. And we've found that they're a lot more willing to take care of what we've built because they feel like they have skin in the game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, I'm so glad that you said, I feel like that's got to be like your life quote, is the 90% attraction and 10% promotion. I've heard you say that so many times. That has marked me so much time. Every time I go to quote it, though, I always forget one of the words, either promotion or attraction. And I'm like, it's supposed to be 90% this and 10% promotion. But no, like that's great.
Because that's what we're taught as marketers. Whether you're an undergraduate in business school right now or you're getting an MBA, so much of what people talk about, especially in schools, when it comes to marketing, is all about promotion, promotional activities, email, this, that, and they totally forget about attraction. I mean, you can build something that is really well built that people just don't want. Conversely, you can build something that's very poorly made but serves a great need and have it take off like wildfire. So again, like it's about that flexibility. It's about opening it up and listening to the people around you. I think one of the big challenges that I had with Yana, in fact, I won't even say it's a big challenge. Like at one point, Tudor was like, hey man, we should probably update our logo. I was like, don't ever say those words to me again. I love our logo. It's the best thing I've ever seen. But the more product feedback we got, I was like, he was right. And so we ended up changing it. But at that point, I was like unwilling to hear that piece of feedback until I saw more data. And then all of a sudden I was like, okay, it's not just one person who doesn't like it. It's like basically everyone.
Yeah. How do you feel about changing your first child's name? Does that sound okay to you?
Yeah, exactly. That's how it felt. I probably would have been more willing at the time to change my child's name.
That's funny. That's funny. So, okay, awesome. All right. Well, staying in the spirit of speed round, got just a couple more quick ones. So you're gonna have to help me out on this one, Tyler, because I know you could probably go a million years on this one. Who inspires you most?
There's a number of people. Michio Kaku is one. I think he's a theoretical physicist. I follow his work very closely. I think that both he, as well as some folks at Harvard, are doing some really remarkable work around quantum computing that's very, very exciting. In the marketing world, Professor Galloway is somebody that I look up to. He and I often don't see eye to eye politically, but on marketing, I take everything in that he has to offer. I just think he is right there with me about really dialing into that sort of psychological, empathy-based persona in the audience that you're trying to build. And then I would say on a more spiritual basis, I have become a lot closer to my church and my faith in the last 5 years. For me, I grew up going to church, but nobody explained to me why we were actually there. Like, we didn't do stuff at home. We celebrated Christmas and Easter, but even then, like, we didn't talk about the resurrection of Christ. We didn't talk about the birth of Christ or why we were celebrating it, other than in these little cliff notes that as a young child I was able to like sort of ascertain from these pulpit sermons. As I got older, I've drifted farther and farther away from religion, mostly because all I had been able to take away from my upbringing was everything I've done is a sin. There's basically no hope for me. Even if I repent, I'm still going to hell. And I ended up in this church that their entire motto was "Come as you are." So we had people that were addicted to drugs actively coming. We had a large LGBTQ plus community. Wow. We had people that were atheists. Wow. We had people that had worshiped Satan. The church, they were members of the Church of Satan before. And it became this like incredibly welcoming melting pot where the questions I had about my faith that nobody took the time to answer, they were willing to sit down and talk to me about these things. And all of a sudden, I found myself with just an open heart. Where I was willing to hear it from another perspective. And I think largely that's what led me to getting sober, is that the one thing I had proved definitively beyond any shadow of a doubt was that I was completely and utterly incapable of staying sober on my own power. I had proven that repeatedly over years and years and years of experience. But when I surrendered to that higher power, when I said, if you will take this thing from me, if you will lead me to the other side, I promise that I will nurture it. I will take care of it. It's something that I just hold with so much gratitude in my heart for that connection, for that experience, because it's impacted me in ways that have paid dividends that I couldn't imagine. The way I am as a parent, the way I am as a father, the things that have become important to me, how I am as a sibling or as a brother. I have an older and younger brother, and it's impacted all of those things. And I really try and take those life experiences that have been really impactful to me and let that shine through in little ways in how I market products and how I approach problem solving. To me, it's always, how can I be helpful? That's a question we don't often ask as marketers. It's usually, here's why you need my product. Let me tell you about how star-spangled awesome this thing is. Instead of asking, what are the challenges you're trying to solve right now? Maybe your product is not appropriate for them. Maybe it would be an absolute drag on their business. But maybe you know of another product that's equally as helpful. We routinely did that when I was at New Chip, when I helped co-found the incubator program. I routinely turned away founders that I just didn't think would be successful in that program. But because of the 15 years of experience I had, I said, but I know of another accelerator program that's specifically built for companies just like yours. I'd love to make an introduction to help get you some information over there. And so to me, it was always about ending that experience, being helpful in some way. Other founders, I rewrote their entire pitch deck and they never ended up going through our program. But that 3 or 4 hours I spent was deeply impactful to them as a founder. And I think that spirit is exactly what Project 10K is all about. At the end of the day, we're about discovering and backing visionary startups. We don't want people that just have an idea to say it'll never be more than an idea. We now have a way around that. The blockers that every founder faced in the early days just don't really exist anymore. So whatever excuse you've had for laying down on that idea, for not pursuing what it is you're passionate about, the time has never been better to follow those entrepreneurial dreams. And the one thing, my dad told me this 25 years ago, didn't believe it at the time. Turns out he was 100% right. And he said, if you do what you're passionate about, the money will come. But if you chase the dollar, that's all it's ever going to feel like, is that you're chasing that next dollar. And there's a well-known study. I don't know who did it or where it came from, but it's like, after $70,000 in income, there's no incremental improvement to your happiness. And as I've scaled past that in my career, I can absolutely say that that's true. Money will solve a number of problems, but it won't make you happy. And that happiness has to come from inside. You have to be able to find that from within you. And that's also, I think like part of what we do, not only at Project 10K, but something that's really important about Yana. Like we're taking people who are transitioning out of being incarcerated, that are leaving mental health hospitals, that are leaving treatment centers, that are broken and battered and just looking for hope. And I think that, that speaks to just, I think a lot of people in 2023, where's the hope? It's become so toxic out there that it can be really difficult to find good news, to shine through the bad. But being in two environments where I get to experience those joys every single day has been just like nothing short of a miracle for me as a founder and as an entrepreneur and as just a business operator.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. Well, yeah. By the way, I take full responsibility for that. Rating your answer as far as speed rounds go, it'd receive a pretty low rating. The actual answer,
you were not lying. You warned your audience though that I was long-winded, so. Halfway through the podcast, but warned nonetheless.
Yeah, I take full responsibility. Like asking you who inspires you most, that's a dangerous question. So no, that's awesome, man. And I love that. I love that. I love the interconnectedness of so much of what you have to say. And I think that's one thing that, this podcast is the art of connection. And I really want people to understand that it is so important that the whole idea of connection is somebody seeing you and you seeing them. And there is a transaction where there's something from you goes into them and then something from them goes into you. And I think it's so important, all these different things about realizing kind of the interconnectedness and the wholeness that can be so helpful. And so, I feel like that answer really fleshes out a lot of that. So, okay, last couple questions and I'll let you go, Mr. Tyler. I got to get out of here too. But what is your favorite song? What's your favorite movie?
Oh, so my favorite movie, and this is controversial, is Avatar, the original one. I thought that was
okay.
So one of my favorite
people,
books
right?
of all. Yeah,
the Blue People, right?
One of my favorite books is correct. Yeah, is "Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee." That is such a deeply horrific portrayal of American history. Yeah. And the parallels between that book and the people that make up the primary, folks on Avatar, really spoke to me. So that's my favorite movie. My favorite song, really, really hard to pin down. I'll give you my top two favorite albums. Number one of all time is Pearl Jam 10. That is as good of a rock album as you can possibly get. Number two would be The Postal Service, Don't Give Up. That's as far as electronica is concerned, that's just a end-to-end beautiful album.
Got it. Man, you are, we always also talk to Tyler how he looks like he's an Oregonian by the way he dresses. And truly by what you just said is your musical choices, you really do need to be living in Portland, Oregon. That is really your scene, Tyler. So, okay, and final question.
My people for sure.
Okay, final question. What is your encouragement to someone trying to figure out how to connect with their audience?
So it's going to seem obvious, but just ask them. Like, honestly, there are so many different points in the user journey of all of your customers, whether you have a brick and mortar store or you're an e-commerce business or any number of things that happen between the time a person finds out who you are as a company to the time that they decide or not decide to purchase your product or service. So your objective, not only as CEO, but if you have someone working in your marketing department, is to understand where that friction is mostly prevalent and then figure out how you can sort of ease. And largely that's what I tell our founders at Project 10K. My job at the end of the day is to help you build on the idea, success, and traction that you've already found and to remove friction in the funnel. And so if you're finding that your messaging is just landing on deaf ears, if you're not seeing the traction that you would have hoped or you would have anticipated, just ask them why. Doesn't have to be this. I mean, you could do a forum, you could do an impromptu survey, you could ask if they'd be willing to get on the phone with you. Most people, when they know that you're an entrepreneur trying to build a business, are more than welcome to share with you why they bought or why they didn't bought. And then use those as learnable teaching moments. It doesn't mean that what you've built is good or bad. It means that it's an evolving process at all times. And you're always trying to, at the end of the day, your job is to deliver value to the people that paid you for your product or service. And so for me as a marketer, I'm constantly asking, are we providing value? And if we are, how so? And if we're not, why. And I think that really helps us rein in our creative marketing juices, because everyone on the team has a million ideas. I came to the point at New Chip, and I think I shared this with you. I was like, if we have one more good idea, we're going to probably go out of business. Now, that ended up happening anyway for a number of other reasons. But I think that it largely holds true, like follow the things that the data supports. If the data doesn't support it, then wait till it does. And if it never happens, that's okay. The last piece of advice that I'll share is, and this really became my own phrase based on an amalgamation of something that I heard earlier in life. But, I often say, when in doubt, look at the data. Still in doubt, look at more data. If you still can't come to a conclusion after that, you're either looking at the wrong data set or it's a terrible, terrible choice. Whatever you're planning is not going to work out well. And so for me, that's largely where it stems from.
Amen. Dude, sorry, I had to give an amen to that. That's so solid. And by the way, if you're scared by the word data is literally just, it's what are people doing? It's tracking what are people doing. And that should definitely, whatever, if you are wanting to run a business, if you're wanting to do something that has an audience, it should always be informed by what are people doing, what do they want, the data. So man, awesome. Again, thank you so much, Tyler. Like I said, you can find him on LinkedIn. You can find him with his startup, Yana. And then also, if you happen to be an amazing startup, then definitely check out Project 10K, and they could be a great fit to help you out. So awesome. All right. Thanks, Tyler. You have a great rest of your day, man.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it. You too. Take care.